My brother had always been considered my father's favorite son. At least, that's how it seemed to me. Daniel and I had grown up in the same house, shared the same childhood memories, and loved the same parents. But there had always been one difference between us. My father trusted Daniel with almost everything, while I was usually the one taking care of the house, looking after Dad, and handling the smaller things in his business. Daniel would often tell me, "Sarah, you don't need to worry about these things. I'll take care of Dad's business." I would smile and say, "That's fine, but don't forget to take care of Dad too." He would laugh and reply, "You worry about everything." I had no idea that one day, that same brother would become the person who tried to take everything away from me. After my father's death, our house became completely silent. A few nights before he passed away, Dad had come into my room. He was very weak, but there was a strange calmness in his voice. He held my hand and said, "Sarah, after I'm gone, take care of your brother." Tears filled my eyes. "Dad, why are you talking like this? You're not going anywhere." He smiled. "Life is unpredictable, but remember one thing. I've made everything fair for both of you." I looked at him. "What do you mean?" He smiled again and said, "My will make sure everything is divided fairly." That was the last real conversation I ever had with my father. A few days later, he passed away. After the funeral, the house slowly became empty. The relatives left, the visitors disappeared, and a silence returned. I was sitting in my father's favorite chair, looking at his photograph, when Daniel suddenly walked into the room. He was holding a file. "Sarah, we need to talk about the inheritance." I looked at him in disbelief. "Now? Dad has only been gone for a few days." Daniel placed the file on the table. "Life doesn't stop. We have to move forward." I opened the file. As I read the documents, my heart stopped. I looked at Daniel. "What is this?" He calmly replied, "Dad's will." I read the page again, and then again. Almost the entire family estate had been left to Daniel. I looked up at him. "This can't be right." Daniel shrugged. "It is." "No," I said. "Dad personally told me that everything would be divided equally between us." Daniel gave me a cold smile. "Maybe he changed his mind before he died." I stared at him. "You really expect me to believe that?" He became angry. "Sarah, I have legal documents. You only have something Dad supposedly told you." I couldn't answer. He was right about one thing. I had no proof. I looked at him with tears in my eyes. "So I'm getting nothing?" Daniel sighed. "You can have a small portion of the house if you want, but everything else belongs to me." At that moment, I looked at my brother and realized that the Daniel standing in front of me wasn't the same brother I had grown up with. I asked him one final question. "What did you talk about with Dad during his last days?" He hesitated. Then he said, "Nothing important." But his eyes told me something was wrong. I left the house that evening. I made a promise to myself. If this wasn't my father's true final wish, I would uncover the truth. The next morning, I went to my father's old lawyer, Mr. Wilson. I explained everything. He listened carefully. Then he said, "Sarah, your father never told me that he wanted to leave everything to Daniel." I immediately asked, "Then what about this will? Let me see it." I handed him the document. He studied it carefully. His expression suddenly changed. I asked, "What's wrong?" He looked at me and quietly said, "This is not your father's original will." My heart started racing. "How do you know?" He walked over to a locked cabinet. "Because the original will is here." He took out an old file and placed it on the desk. I opened it with trembling hands. There were my father's real signatures, and the will clearly stated that his property was to be divided equally between Daniel and me. Tears filled my eyes. My father hadn't lied to me. My brother had. But there was still one question. I looked at Mr. Wilson. If this is the real will, then where did Daniel get the fake one? Mr. Wilson took a deep breath. "That's what we need to find out." Then he pulled out another file. "Your father told me something else shortly before he died." "What?" "He told me that if there was ever a dispute between you and Daniel over the inheritance, I should contact you immediately." I was confused. "Then why didn't you contact me?" "Because your father specifically asked me to wait." "Wait for what?" Mr. Wilson looked directly into my eyes to see who made the first move. Suddenly, everything became clear. My father had known that something might happen. I returned home that evening. Daniel was already there. He looked at me. "Where have you been?" "At Dad's lawyer's office." His expression changed instantly. I placed the original will on the table. "Look at this." Daniel stared at the document. His face went pale. I said, "Now tell me where the fake will came from." He said nothing. "Daniel," he suddenly shouted, "you don't understand. Then explain it to me." He sat down. For several seconds, he said nothing. Then he finally whispered, "I took Dad's money." My heart sank. "How much?" He lowered his head. "Almost $200,000. I stared at him. "Why?" "I was in debt." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "So you stole Dad's money?" "I was going to pay it back." "But you didn't." He remained silent. Then I asked the question that mattered most. "Did you create the fake will?" He immediately shook his head. "No." "How can I believe you now?" He looked at me. "I took the money, Sarah, but I didn't create the fake will." "Then who did?" He hesitated. "Harper, Dad's accountant." Daniel explained that Harper had handled my father's financial affairs for years. He also told me that Dad had become suspicious of Harper shortly before his death. I asked Daniel, "Why didn't you tell me this before?" He looked ashamed. "Because I knew that once everyone discovered I had taken Dad's money, they would blame me for everything." The next morning, Daniel and I went to Harper's office, but he was gone. His office had been emptied. I started searching through the remaining papers. Then I found something. An envelope. My father's name was written on it. Inside was a receipt. The date on the receipt was the exact same date the fake will had been prepared. I looked at Daniel. "We need to find Harper." We discovered that he had already left the city, but he had made one mistake. He had left behind financial records. Mr. Wilson obtained the bank documents, and investigators began examining them. Then they discovered something shocking. Money had been transferred from Daniel's account to Harper shortly before the fake will was created. I looked at Daniel. He was crying. "You tried to steal my inheritance." He shook his head. I was desperate. "You didn't just steal money, Daniel. You broke Dad's trust." A few days later, Harper was arrested. Investigators searched his computer and found the original digital file used to create the fake will. The truth was finally coming out. Harper had created the fake will, but Daniel had helped him by giving him money. Daniel had been part of the plan, even if he hadn't created the document himself. The day we went to court, I carried my father's original will in my hands. The judge reviewed all the evidence. The fake will was declared invalid. My father's real will was officially recognized. Everything was finally divided according to his wishes. I received the inheritance that my father had intended for me, but that wasn't what mattered most to me. When I walked outside the courtroom, I saw Daniel standing alone. He looked broken. He quietly said, "Sarah, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness." I didn't say anything. He continued, "But if you can, please give me one chance." I looked at him for a long moment. Then I said, "I can try to forgive you, but I'll never forget what happened." He nodded. "I understand." I took out my father's photograph. "Dad wanted us to take care of each other. You broke his final wish, but maybe we can still make things right." Daniel looked at the photograph. For the first time in months, I saw something different in his eyes. There was no greed. There was only regret. That day, I learned something I would never forget. Inheritance isn't only about houses, money, or land. Sometimes the greatest inheritance parents leave behind is the trust and love between their children. My brother tried to take my inheritance, but in the end, the truth came out. And the truth didn't just return what belonged to me. It brought my father's final wish back to life.